The least 32 caliber versus the greatest 32 caliber jacketed hollow point defensive ammunition. And today I have our Speer Gold Dot 32 ACP and 327 Federal Magnum. I'm gonna be testing these through short barrel. So our 32 ACP is a 60 grain jacketed hollow point, gold dot hollow point, rated at 960 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. And our 327 Federal Magnum is a 100 grain jacketed hollow point, gold dot hollow point, rated at 1500 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. So I'm going to use my kel-tec P32 2.5-inch barrel to test our 32 ACP and our Ruger LCR and 327 Federal Magnum with a 1.875-inch barrel to test our 327 Federal Magnum. So both are 32 caliber. One is moving a lot faster and it's heavier. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. So we're going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential for hollow point expansion is with both of these. You know, I started doing that because sometimes denim would clog hollow points. So I want to at least see what these are supposed to look like expanded before we move on to a real world simulation. So we're going to do a plain clear ballistic shot, and then we'll do a real world simulation shot of 4 layers of denim on this first 3-inch piece that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we'll have a 1/4-inch medium density fiber board to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4-inch medium density fiber board to represent hitting back ribs. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of flesh, so 3 inches and 8 inches is more like 1.5 inches, and our 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches and 8 inches in a real target. So it's like we're trying to simulate a 9.5-inch target here. So we'll do a plain clear ballistic shot and then a real world simulation shot, and then I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 32 ACP gold dot. We are rated at 960 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. So 60 grain, rated at 960 feet per second. Let's see how close I get to that through my 2.5-inch barrel here. 763, 766, 772, 785, 780. So pretty accurate little round there, not too bad. Our 327 Federal Magnum, we were rated at 1500 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel, but you know, being a Magnum, we're not even going to come close to that. But let's see how close I get to 1500 through this little stub nose here. 1314, 1310, 1312, 1249, 1292. So definitely a lot of velocity there, and that's why I like 327 Federal Magnum. It's kind of like a 9mm plus P plus velocity, but through a little snub. Great velocity there. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these two compare. All right, our first shot in the plain clear ballistics, our best potential shot to get hollow point expansion. You know, no denim in the way to clog a hollow point, no rib stimulation to slow down its potential for penetration either. So let's see what we get here with our 32 ACP gold dot. All right, hit that with our 327 Federal Magnum. All right, one more shot with the 327. I don't know where it went. It's not in the block. All right, so I want to shoot it one more time with our 32 just to make sure we get the same results. So one more with our 32 ACP. Let's go take a look. All right, so we got basically the same results again, and I didn't see hollow point expansion with that first shot. I don't see it with the second shot either with our 32 ACP. So our first shot with our 32 ACP, we had a penetration of 9 3/4, and our second shot here about 9 1/2. They're very, very close. They're not even exactly those numbers. It's like not even 1/8 of an inch difference there, but you know, 9 1/2 and 9 3/4 is as close as I can show that measurement. Camera parallax will make it you think that I'm putting my finger up here, the bullet is going up there a little bit closer to maybe 10 1/2 inches, but yeah, 9 3/4, 9 1/2 inches. So not a lot of penetration there, and also I don't see any hollow point expansion. Now with our 327 Federal Magnum, that has a massive amount of expansion and damage going on. And when I said you know, I like that because it's like a 9mm plus P plus, I'm talking a 9mm plus P plus through a 4.5 5 inch barrel. That's the type of velocity this gets. And granted, the bullet weight is 15 grains lighter, but still, you know, the more velocity you get, the more chance you have of getting consistent hollow point expansion. And we got just a massive amount of energy dump in this first 3 inches with our 327 versus our 32s that have very little. Huge amount of tearing here. A lot of people like to say you can't see damage in clear ballistics. So they're saying that the 32, what the track is showing, is exactly the same as that 327, I guess. But that's not what I'm seeing. And we have a penetration here of 14.5 inches, maybe 14 3/4, right around there. I'll call it 14 3/4. Really good penetration, really good energy dump and damage. Now the recoil was definitely greater though. But let's put on our rib simulation and see how they compare with our fabric and our rib simulation and more of our real world simulation. All right, our real world simulation, 4 layers of denim, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard after that to represent back ribs and more clear ballistics. So 32 ACP real world simulation. Let's see what this does. All right. Let's hit that with our 327 Federal Magnum. Let's go take a look. All right, so definitely a big difference there. And, you know, even after going through denim, we can see that our 327 Federal Magnum still had a huge amount of energy dump going on there after going through that denim. That's where our 32 ACP, yeah, I didn't expect to see anything there, considering that after going through plain gel, we didn't get any energy dump or expansion or anything like that. Huge difference here overall of what we're seeing. Now we look at our first rib simulation. Our 32 ACP in the bottom is starting to tumble a little bit. Our 327 went in perfectly straight with expansion. I like to see that. Sometimes hollow points don't do that, but I like to see that. That means it's performing quite well. It's going to remain consistent all the time. Now our 32 ACP, we have a penetration of 9 1/4 inches or 9 1/8 inches. Obviously no expansion because, you know, we didn't see it through a plain gel shot. We're not going to see it now. Our 327, almost as much energy dump with that denim and that rib simulation as what we saw in plain clear ballistics. Now we did lower that expansion size a little bit, which made that bullet go a little bit deeper, and then the bullet rolled back in the channel. I see that sometimes with high energy or high expanding rounds. What we got there is 17 inches of penetration and, you know, a very consistent expansion there. So there's definitely a big difference in 32 caliber depending on what 32 caliber you're talking about. Our 32 ACP is pretty mild. But our 327 Federal Magnum, the recoil on that is pretty stout. It's nowhere near a 357 Magnum out of a snub, but it's definitely greater than a typical 9mm, a little bit greater out of a gun like that than 40 Smith & Wesson. But I would say it's pretty much in the 40 Smith & Wesson range for its felt recoil out of a gun that small. Yeah, right about the same. So, you know, definitely a lot more recoil, not uncontrollable recoil, as where our 32 is kind of like shooting a 22. But let's pull these out of the block. We'll take a close-up look at them. Then I'll shoot our steel and see how, you know, the different power levels will affect my ability to land these on target. So let's do that. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets. Our 32 ACP, our first one through our plain gel, our second one through our plain gel, and then our 327 Federal Magnum through our plain gel here. So I'll just show one of these 32 ACPs up close because they both look basically the same. Not really a whole lot going on with that bullet. No expansion really starting at all. Now with our 327 Federal, this has absolutely beautiful flowering. Absolutely a perfect example of what a gold dot should look like. This beautiful expansion, big expansion. You see that gold dot right there in the middle from that plating there in the middle. That's where it gets its name. So really, really good performance overall with that 327 Federal Magnum. Now going through our rib simulation, you know, you're not going to see a whole lot different with our 32 ACP. There is just a little bit of deformation on that nose, but really no expansion to speak of. And our 327, this is very typical of gold dot. The 9mm version does this exact same thing. It gets a little bit smaller after going through our rib simulation in our denim. Always looks about like that in comparison to the plain gel shots that look like that. And our 327 is doing the exact same thing. So overall, I'd say our 327 is really, really good performance, as where our 32 ACP, I don't know why they're making them like that, to be honest. They're just not very good. So that's a close-up look at those. All right, 14 yards from the target, I'm just going to get a front sight picture and pop these off as fast as I think I can hit the target, see if there's a big difference in shootability and recoil control with these. So here's our 32 ACP. All right. And I'm not even looking at the target when I do that to adjust where they're hitting. I'm just looking at that front sight and popping them off. And that's very, very easy to shoot. I don't even really feel any recoil in my hand, even with a pistol that light. It just feels like shooting a 22. Now this is a bigger gun, but it's definitely a lot bigger recoil. Let's see what I can do with this. All right, so it's doable. It's doable, and that's really great because, you know, this is 9mm plus P energy, but through a little snubby here. And even though it has 9mm plus P energy, it's actually better in a sense because you're getting more velocity. So even though the energy is not greater than 9mm plus P, the velocity is, which makes it more consistent overall. But shooting that there, definitely a lot less than shooting 357 mag from a snub. It's relatively controllable. So let me back it up and shoot from a little more distance and see how these continue to shoot from a little more distance, shooting slower. All right, 40 yards from the target. Let's see how I can get with this little P32 here, see if I can hit the target from 40 yards. It's pretty far for a little pistol like this, but let's see what I can do. All right, so some of them kind of shot to the right, but the other ones just shot low. So I didn't really see a whole lot of consistency with that round in this pistol. But the two that hit seemed to hit in a consistent area. So 327 Federal. Let's see how I can do with this. Huh. So first shot, I think I just jerked that shot because, you know, I wasn't expecting that much recoil. But the other shots hit a little bit more consistently. I did kind of pull one, it looks like possibly. But yeah, a little bit better for some distance with this, which is to be expected. You know, you're shooting a lot faster, a heavier bullet. It's just going to be more consistent. Now, one concern here with our 32 ACP is rim lock. You know, that's a potential to happen, and people who say it can't happen, watch my video with the Buffalo Bore hardcast flat point. I got rim lock in that, and I could not get the pistol operational until I took the magazine apart and pulled the rounds out from the bottom. So that's a thing that could happen, and with rounds like this, these are very, very short. That's a potential because there was quite a bit of room between the nose of the bullet and the front of the magazine, and there just wasn't really anything touching it. So being that there's that issue, and being that we had absolutely terrible terminal ballistics performance, I'm definitely not going to recommend this particular gold dot. And one might say, well, if you put it in a longer barrel, it'll do better. I'm going to say probably not that much better, because pretty much every other 32 ACP I've tested out of this pistol, in plain gel, we get expansion. Or we get, you know, no expansion through the MDF and denim, but we have pretty good penetration. This gave neither of those things in plain gel. So looking at this is a pretty weak round. We're just not getting anything with that. Now with 327 Federal, this is actually probably the best 327 Federal Magnum there is out there now. I've noticed over the past few years they've been loading, every company's been loading 327 Federal a lot less and less and less. This gold dot used to be 450 foot-pounds energy. Now it's down there below 400. You know, critical defense is like 320 maybe, if I'm remembering right. Even the HST I carry is something like 330, 340, if I'm recalling right, foot-pounds energy. So the gold dot is actually the top of the line. The reason why I don't carry that is because it has a little more recoil than what I personally like. So I typically carry the HST, or there was a time I would carry the Hydroshock low recoil, because that has about the energy of a 38 plus P, but moving a lot faster. But looking at this ammo here, the gold dot, yeah, there's a big difference going from your least 32 caliber to your greatest 32 caliber. I know somebody's gonna get on here and be like, 32 Smith & Wesson and 3220, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like jacketed hollow point and modern ammunition. And between both of those here, big difference there. A 32 isn't just a 32. But looking at this as a standard ammo review, terrible 32 ACP performance, but pretty good with the 327. So interesting test. That's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.